Prime Field.
Prime Field family, lock in, because UConn's offense right now isn't just good, it's engineered. It's a system with a backbone. And the wild part? The Huskies have become one of the most lethal three-point teams in the country by obsessing over something that sounds old school, paint touches. That's the core of what scouts call the paint touch empire. UConn isn't hunting threes first. They're forcing the defense to collapse, then cashing in on the windows that collapse creates. And on February 1st, against Tennessee, that entire empire gets its biggest stress test of the season. Let's define it cleanly. UConn's modern offense is built on a paradox. The interior is the engine, the perimeter is the amplifier. Every possession starts with a question. Can we touch the paint? Post entry, drive, short roll, baseline cut. Something that forces help defenders to take that fatal half step inward. And once that shell collapses, that's where AZ Fudd and Ali Zebel get oxygen. That's where kickouts become clean looks instead of prayers. It's not random ball movement, it's a decision-making matrix. The primary read is not is the three open, it's did the defense collapse. Because if you can consistently collapse a defense, you can consistently manufacture elite shots. That's why this offense travels. Lighting, rims, road crowds, those can mess with shooting. But a post seal at the rim? A cut behind an overplay? A short roll into the mid-post? That stuff is portable. And that's a big reason UConn sits at 22-0 and looks like a true national title favorite even with a rotation that's had to bend through injuries. So now the real question is the Empire real against size and length because Tennessee is bringing both. If you want the cleanest proof of concept for the Empire, it's the road win at Seton Hall on January 24th, 2026, and it starts with one number that jumps off the screen. 46 points in the paint. Nearly half the scoring came from inside. UConn shot 58.3% overall, and on twos they were clinical. 24 for 31. That's not hot shooting. That's a tactical choice being executed. And look at the mechanism. UConn forced 27 turnovers, then turned pressure into paint. 20 fast break points. Mostly the highest percentage shots in basketball before Seton Hall could even set the shell. The Huskies also scored 37 points off turnovers, which tells you something important. The defense wasn't just creating steals, it was creating instant interior opportunities. Now spotlight the interior drivers of that game. Sarah Strong and freshman Blanca Quinones combined for 33 points on 14 of 23 shooting. That's the Empire in its purest form. Even if a perimeter player finds a rhythm later, the baseline is already established. We can get to the rim whenever we want. And if you're Tennessee watching that tape, the message is simple. Protect the rim or UConn will bypass the whole three-point conversation and win inside anyway. Now we pivot to the game that people are going to remember for the highlight packages. January 28th, 2026 versus Xavier. The night UConn hit a single-game record of 15 threes, and Ali Zebel detonated for 10 made threes. Here's the trap. Casual viewers will call that the Zebel game and assume it was a perimeter freak show. But the Empire says, show me the paint. And the paint was still there. 34 points in the paint. In a game where UConn also attempted 34 threes. That's the whole point. This isn't a team flipping identities based on who's hot. It's a dual threat structure that stays intact. Because why did Zebel get oceans of space in the first place? The vortex effect. Sarah Strong went 10 for 14, scored 25 points, and forced defenders to pinch inward. You can't overplay the arc if you're bleeding at the rim. That's the pick-a-poison dilemma. Collapse on the interior generator or stay home and watch the perimeter punish the help. And there's a second layer here that matters against elite opponents. This was a stress test where the offense proved it can use the three-pointer to reopen the paint, not the other way around. When Zebel started raining, especially that second quarter stretch, Xavier couldn't keep packing the lane. The defense had to extend, and Strong did what interior hubs do. She ate early. 19 of her 25 came in the first half, largely in the low block and on high-low action. So the takeaway isn't UConn can shoot. It's UConn's shooting as a consequence of interior collapse. Now let's talk about the stat that's basically a fingerprint, assists. UConn is at 24.1 assists per game, #1 in the nation, and they've stacked 20 straight games with 20-plus assists. That is not normal, even for great teams. That's identity, and it's tied directly to the collapse-first hierarchy. KK Arnold and Ashlyn Shade aren't playing my turn, your turn. They're hunting rotations. They're hunting the help defender who moves 6 inches toward the paint. Because once that defender commits, the next pass is obvious and the shot becomes clean. Arnold's 4.45 assist-to-turnover ratio is the key micro-proof. High assist systems often pay for it with sloppy giveaways, but UConn's recent assist volume, 25 versus Seton Hall, 26 versus Xavier, came without turning into chaos. That tells you these passes are being thrown into high percentage windows, post seals, short rolls, cutters. So when you hear read and react, don't think freestyle. Think disciplined reads, collapse, kick, cut, retouch, finish. And for Tennessee, that's terrifying because you can't just scout one set. You have to survive a constant decision tree. Here's where the Empire becomes championship level. It stabilizes you when the perimeter goes cold. Against Xavier, UConn opened the game 0 for 10 from 3. In a lot of gyms, that's when the panic starts. That's when teams start forcing quick threes to fix the math. But UConn didn't have to do that, because the paint touch baseline was already built into the system. While the threes were clanking early, Sarah Strong anchored the offense with 19 first-half points. So instead of chasing the game, UConn stayed in control long enough for the perimeter to normalize, going from 7.7% from deep in the first quarter to 44.1% by the final buzzer, while still holding that 34-point paint baseline. That's the line. Paint touches travel. And psychologically, it matters too. When the team is still scoring inside, shooters don't feel like they have to save possessions with tough looks. They can wait for quality. The interior is the anchor. The perimeter is the sail. Now let's get into what this looks like on tape, because the Empire isn't just post up and hope. There are 3 mechanical cues that keep showing up. First, quick post seals. Sarah Strong establishing position isn't a slow wrestling match, it's immediate leverage. She seals, she creates a clean target, and the entry pass becomes safe. That's why you see lines like 10 for 14 versus Xavier. She's catching the ball where the defense can't recover. Second, the short roll hub. When a defense tries to trap or hedge the perimeter, UConn doesn't always roll all the way to the rim. They roll into the mid post or a short corner, where Strong can become a passer. That's how you punish aggressive coverages without forcing risky cross-court passes. Third, the baseline cut behind denial. When teams overextend to take away a shooter, UConn doesn't just reset, they cut behind you. That's how players like Blanca Quinones' 7 for 9 versus Seton Hall get high-efficiency looks. Movement that makes the paint a moving target, not a crowded parking lot. And all of it ladders up to the biggest team-wide proof. UConn is #1 in the nation in 2-point percentage at .604. That's not just talent, that's execution. There's another benefit defenses hate: fouls. In the last 2 games, UConn shot 91.7% at the line versus Seton Hall and 76.9% versus Xavier, with 11 free throws made in the Seton Hall win and 10 versus Xavier. Sarah Strong alone is 7 for 7 at the stripe across those games. That matters because it raises the floor. If the game slows down, if the threes go quiet, if the opponent tries to make it ugly, free throws are points you can bank. And in the Tennessee matchup, foul pressure becomes strategic. If UConn can force early foul trouble on Tennessee's front court, if those rim protectors have to defend without contact, the entire pack the paint plan gets weaker. Now we have to talk about the one thing that can actually crack the Empire: losing discipline. Because the first quarter against Xavier showed the danger. UConn started 0 for 10 from 3, and for a stretch they leaned it into volume. 13 threes in the first 10 minutes, only 1 made, and the lead stayed tight at 22-17. That's what perimeter only looks like. The floor shrinks for cutters, defenders stay glued to shooters, and suddenly the back cuts disappear. The offense becomes easier to guard to possession because the defense isn't being forced to rotate. Against Tennessee's length, that's not a rough start. That's how you invite a real upset. So the coaching point is simple. The 15 threes versus Xavier have to stay a product of the system, not a replacement for it. Let's talk endgame, because against Tennessee, you're not guaranteed a runway. You might be in a 4-point game with 4 minutes left. What lineup keeps the Empire functioning? The closing group needs 2 non-negotiables, an elite interior generator and an elite entry passer. That means Sarah Strong and KK Arnold are the spine. From there, you add gravity and spacing. AZ Fudd's perimeter pull. Ally Bell is the spacing X factor. Ashlyn Shade is the cutter/finisher who turns turnovers into points. And the chess move is this: Strong is a point forward center late. If she's at the 5 surrounded by shooters, you force a brutal decision on Tennessee. Does their big stay home in the paint and give up threes? Or step out and watch cuts and seals slice the rim? And that's what the Empire is supposed to look like in closing time. Interior reliability plus perimeter lethality fused. Here's the final micro check that tells you whether UConn is healthy offensively. Where do the paint points come from? If your paint points come from flow, cuts, rolls, assisted finishes, you're stable. If they come from late clock bailouts, tough isolations, and forced layups, your offense is decaying. Look at the indicators. Team assist percentage was 71.4% versus Seton Hall and 72.2% versus Xavier, with 25 and 26 assists. That screams flow. And you even saw it there from the bench. Kaylee Heckel's 8 assists and 8 rebounds versus Xavier is the kind of depth signal that says the system isn't fragile. So here's the deciding prediction for February 1st. UConn's assisted 2-point production. If UConn is generating a high number of assisted interior buckets, it means they've manipulated Tennessee's length through movement and reads. If that number collapses, it means Tennessee has forced them into isolations. And that's the environment that favors shot blocking and contested finishes. So when you zoom out, the story isn't UConn can shoot, but it's not UConn is big. The story is that UConn has built an offense with a baseline. Paint touches are non-negotiable. Seton Hall gave us the blueprint with 46 paint points. Xavier gave us the proof of balance, 15 threes, but still 34 in the paint. And the assist profile tells you it's not luck, it's structure. Now the Empire walks into its biggest stress test. Tennessee's length, Tennessee's rim protection, Tennessee's defensive architecture designed to pack the paint. So I'm asking you this for the comments. Against Tennessee, what do you trust more to decide the game? UConn's ability to keep generating paint touches through flow, or their ability to hit enough threes to pry the lane open? And if you had to pick one swing factor, is it Sarah Strong's interior control, or KK Arnold's ability to deliver the entry pass without turnovers?
Prime Field